Hey guys, I'm John from Legacy Woodworking Machinery, and this past year at AWFS in Las Vegas, I met the Vectric team and I talked about how much I loved using their software to create beautiful furniture. Two of the most crucial parts of this project were cutting the complex curves on all four sides of our legs. We did that in the turning center of my CNC machine using Vectric's software. The second most crucial part of the style of this table, we're using these brass pins here to create this piece of joinery. The decorative part of the table really comes from the top here, where we were able to do a resin poured inlay here in the top of our tabletop. Now the shape of the tabletop and the shelf was 3D carved using Aspire software in order to build this graceful curve in here that adds to the aesthetic of this Asian-inspired table. In short, this is my very first piece of complex furniture created 100% with Aspire software and my CNC machine. Hope you guys enjoyed the rest of my class. We'll see you guys later. In this class, we're going to work on designing some furniture. And the first thing we do when we're working on furniture, we need to find some inspiration. Now, you might find that from a client or somewhere else, but for me, I found that Pinterest is fantastic for that. So when I was looking for a nice side table to put in my house, I wanted to make something that was kind of a statement piece. So I love the idea of the floating top. So I did that and just looked around Pinterest and said, what can I find? I love the way these risers kind of lift up here and hold that tabletop up above there. Love the two different colors of wood. So that is where I got that inspiration from. And down here a little bit deeper, I actually really like these curved legs here and here. So by taking a little bit of that into account, I said, okay, it's time to start designing. So as I was jumping into my Aspire software, which by the way is the best software out there for drawing, just love everything about it. This is what I came up with. So this is just kind of a sketch and an idea of what I wanted my table to look like. I love the curved legs. I think they're just fantastic. They make it a really cool statement piece. And I decided on something a little bit different, was by allowing these dowels to actually be shown. You know, that way that just again looks kind of like it's this ultra modern piece that I was really kind of aiming for. So once you're done drawing the front view and you're just kind of sketching it out, trying to make it about what you want it to look like, the next thing to do is to go ahead and sketch out your side view. And so what I did here is I just used my same leg pattern, but you'll notice here, these holes for these dowels are now laid out this way. And on my skirt right here, I have my holes on the ends, but I also have my recess holes to go in and tie in to my riser right here. So that allows me to look at two different views, gives me an idea of how wide my table is, how wide my tabletop is here, and how long my tabletop is there, how long the shelf is and how wide the shelf is. It also allowed me to take a look at a couple of different ways that I could tie everything together. And down here in the lower shelves, I opted for a dowel, and that just gave me a really cool, way to hold my bottom shelf into place and still make it look like it's part of the overall design of the table. After this, the next thing that we drew was the top. Now I have both the top and the shelf here, and you'll notice that I've placed my riser down inside here. I actually brought it in 1/4 of the way from both ends. That way I had a good solid measurement for it. I love to work by the numbers. It just makes everything turn out so perfectly. Then I was able to measure this section here, and then of course center that here, a 3/4 inch piece. Now that's exactly the same length as it is here and there. After that, then came the more exciting part, was working on the legs. Now the legs are probably the part that was the most complex for me, and the part that honestly I was the most scared of. And so on this part here, what we did is we laid out both legs. On one side of the leg, we're going to need these 4 holes, and on the other side of the leg, we're going to need this hole here. And they're not the same. I found as I was looking at this that the front left right here and the back right leg were the same, and the front right leg and the back left leg were the same. Now, after doing it, it makes perfectly logical sense, but when you're in the middle of it, sometimes it gets a little stressful. So it's always fun, always cool. The last 2 pieces were just the riser here and then of course the skirt. And by drawing each of these pieces one at a time, I was able to take a look at my full table and now take them into Aspire and draw each part individually so I could go ahead and machine them. So let's take a look first at the tabletop and the skirt. Now these two pieces are phenomenal. My tabletop is two-sided because I wanted to lay in some bamboo here. Because it's a very Asian-inspired table, I wanted to do something to honor, the way that they use bamboo in so many cool parts of their life. So I thought I'd add that into my tabletop. So here we just use a V-carve, and all we did was just V-carve it in and then pour in a nice black resin with just a little bit of red flecking in there, a little bit of red color. So if we take a look at this one, we can see how this looks. We just laid out this bamboo. Totally easy to do, looks phenomenal. Now we can take both of these ones, and by turning them back on, we can say our toolpath color is black. Then we take this one here. We're going to make it black as well. And now we have exactly what our table is going to look like. One of the coolest features in Aspire is actually over here where we can pick our wood. So if I come down here to my material settings, I can come up here to mahogany, make it look exactly like my tabletop in the finished table. So I love the way this looks. I love the way it turned out. On the other side of the tabletop, what we did here is we made a couple of 2-rail sweep. Well, actually, we just made one 2-rail sweep and a couple of pockets, and we were done. This was an easy tabletop to make. Let's go through designing out the 2-rail sweep. Go ahead and delete this original one here, and we'll turn off this toolpath just so it's not in the way. To make a 2-rail sweep, I just go down here to the 2-rail sweep tool. I'm going to grab the outer border first and the inner border second. And I like to think of these as train tracks. And this is the train that's going to go around it. So let's go ahead and use our selections. And we get a red line and a green line, and then we get these arrows. So by clicking on our cross section or our train, we're able to click right here. And I'm going to say sweep between spans and fill the center with closed vector rails. Now I'm ready to go, so let's just go ahead and hit apply. Now what we're going to notice when we look at this view, and let's go ahead and toggle our views here, is that we have one really nice corner here, and a corner that's not quite right, another really nice corner here, and another corner that's not quite right. Let's go ahead and fix those two corners. It's really easy to do. All we have to do is we're going to click down here on our red corner right here. Oh, we got to go back into this view. Let's grab this guy again. Let's click our corner. Then I'm just going to pull this yellow dot right over there. And what it's going to do is it's going to sweep between these two spans, but anchor back up on each corner. And that will make us have these beautiful corners the way they belong. Go ahead and reapply that and see how those corners come out perfectly. So now it's perfect. This is exactly the tabletop that I wanted. I have a beautiful bamboo here on the top, and then I'm going to have this piece here on the bottom. So let's go ahead and check out our toolpaths for that. Now the lower shelf for the table was almost the exact same. It had a slightly different shape here. So the same 2-rail sweep was used. And then what we did is we added in our cutout for our dowel to go there. And so what we did is we used a 3/4 inch dowel. So I used a 3/4 inch core box bit or a round over bit in order to make that happen. So let's show you how that works here. We roughed it. Then after the roughing, I went ahead and laid those in. And now I machined the other direction just so you could see that, honestly, it doesn't matter if you go left to right or up and down. All right, now that we've cut out the tabletop and the shelf, it's time to go on to the next piece. The piece we're going to work on next is the skirt. So this piece right here. The skirt is a little bit unique because we're going to do two-sided machining on it, and we're going to work on the end of the board. We're going to work on the front side, the back side, and the end of the board. So out of the 6 sides, we're going to work on 4 of them. Let's go ahead and get started. Step number 1 is just laying this out so that we understand where everything's at. And I've laid these all out here, so it's just easy to see here and here. And we're going to drill right here on this first side, just our holes here. We're going to drill them and we're going to pocket them out. We pocket them out so we can put some plugs in. And I opted for maple on this one with some mahogany plugs. So real quickly and really easy, all we did here was first run our pocket. And that toolpath was done just by selecting out these 4 circles here. And we punched them down to 1/4 of an inch deep, enough that I could put a plug in there and sand it off. Still have enough in there to make it look good. Now, when I'm doing profiling on something that's bigger than the bit that I'm using, I really like to do the spiral toolpath. This toolpath, honestly, is one of the best additions. Love the way it works. And you'll notice here that as it's spiraling down, it's just going to plunge down in as it goes. And I think that just makes a much better toolpath. With a spiral downcut cutter, it also makes it so there's no tear out on the top of your board. That's the way that I like to do that one. Drilling here, I just use an 1/8 of an inch drill bit and drill all the way through the board. That way I had a place where my screw would be dead center. Let's go ahead and just see this side real quick. We just preview our visible toolpath, and we've got our holes and we've got our drill. Now on the other side, it was just as simple. The only thing we're doing here is we're adding 2 quick things. We're going to pocket out for our risers. That's these 2 here. And then we're going to go ahead and just cut off our ends. Now, one of the neat tricks about, profiling when they're open vectors is by setting your start point. So here I just said inside left. And when you click on calculate, it's going to say, hey, they're open vectors, not a single contour. They might work a little differently than we think they will. We're going to say, okay, go ahead and do it anyway. And I'm always going to cut just a little bit deep. And what I wanted to look at here is where my start points are. So my start point was up here and I'm going down, and my start point's down here and it's going up. And I did that so that I could have both of them be on the outside in one toolpath. Let's go ahead and preview our visible toolpaths. Now, when you're using the same tool, the other thing that you can do, and these are both done with the same tool, is you can come in here and select them both, and you can bring them in and set up right here a merged toolpath. By merging the toolpath, I'm going to say shortest path, and you'll see now that it's going to cut here, go here, and then there. It's a phenomenal way to save just a little bit more time when you're out machining. Now that the skirt's done, let's go make some sawdust. All right, with the drilling done, we're going to go ahead and flip this over. So let's go ahead and loosen up our clamps here. Sorry for being left-handed. It sometimes makes it obnoxious. Take this one out. Make sure that's nice and clean. And then what we're looking for is to come back down here right to the same point where I've marked it before. It's going to give us our same spot there. And let's go ahead and tighten it back up. So here we're just going to snug these guys back up here. Okay, now on this one, what it will do is it's going to cut an angle here and do a pocket right on top of those drill holes. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get out of the way, switch the program, and go to work. Okay, with the skirt machined on both the front and the back side, it's time to work on the end of the board to drill these holes into place. One of the coolest things about the Maverick CNC, the one that I'm using to build this project, is the ability to stand the wood up on its end in its joining system to drill holes down through the end of your board. So here's how we're going to set that up. First, we go into our Aspire, and what we're going to do is we're going to lay out our board slightly differently. Here my layout is set up to where it's 3/4 of an inch wide and 3 inches tall. That's because my X goes this direction, my Y goes up here, and my Z, I can tell it that it's as thick as I want. Now, technically, this one is 29 inches long. I don't necessarily need to do that, but I can tell it that it's somewhere deep enough that I get the idea of what the board looks like. Now, the risers I decided to do 2 at a time because they were small enough that I just laid them both out on one board. I did lay this across the Y-axis instead of down the X, just because I could. Thought it'd be more fun to kind of do one way, one the other way, and it doesn't really matter, but it's just however you like to draw your parts. So on this one, all we did was we just transferred over my original artwork right here, brought it in, laid it out, profiled it, and we were done. Simple, quick, fast, and easy. I'm sure you guys all know how to do that one. And what I do like to do is when I'm using, a cutout, I like to set my Z on the bottom instead of on the top, and that makes sure that I preserve my table. And once that's done, I like the ramping, and I go ahead and calculate this out. It's going to cut just a kiss deeper. And on this one, no tabs. I don't like tabs, and so when I can get away with not using them, I don't. Using the ramping toolpath makes it so that when it comes and cuts away finally, just nothing there. And I always make sure that I end my cuts down here on the bottom, where if there's something I need to sand off, I can do that really quickly. Let's go ahead and go cut the risers, drill the ends of the skirts, and drill and cut out the skirts. Let's go ahead and cut out the skirts, drill the ends of the skirts, and make the risers. We're going to start by putting the low pro clamp in. We're going to slide these on the vertical pieces here. Now once they're up and out of the way, I'm going to take my backer blocks, and they're going to actually come in on the horizontal. And the reason we do them on the horizontal is because now I've got a hard stop for these to go against. So these are going to come down here. This will lock into place. And I'm going to go ahead and just snug up these right here. So as we snug these up, what you'll see is that I get a nice parallel to my Y-axis cutting. So my Y-axis is going to be right here, and because both my T-track table and my clamps were set up with the machine, I know it's perfectly parallel. Now I'll take my clamps, now these are just going to grab on the ends, and that's where I want them, and we'll first set this screw into place. This is the screw that's going to hold it onto the table. When that one's done on both of these, then we're going to go ahead and we'll set our clamp into place. So let's go ahead and get both of these ready to go. Okay, with both of those in place, we're going to then take this one, and now this is going to clamp down and in. So you'll see as I compress this, you'll see that gap slowly closes, and it's closing down at an angle. It's going down and inward to make sure that I get a good snug fit and hold my board down to my surface. Let's go find our offsets and make some cuts. All right, so we've got the pieces cut. Let's go ahead and take them out. Loosen up our low pro clamps, push our board this way, and watch them come free. All right, these boards are the two risers for the tabletop. These are going to fit into the tabletop you've seen previously. We're going to show you how that works right now. All right, it's time to go to work. We have got our skirts sanded, machined, ready to go. We've got our table risers ready to go. We've got some clamps here to help hold it together. We've got some screws. We're going to pilot hole and then screw them in. We have got our leftover piece of mahogany here with all of our plugs cut out. That's going to go ahead and plug up these holes on the opposite side. A different wood just to be an accent piece and a part of the art for the piece. Let's go ahead, put some glue in here and go to work. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is that we're not going to do a lot of glue. I'm going to put it on the inside edge here so that if it does, and on the bottom, of course, but if it does leak, it's going to leak down on the inside where I'm not going to see it. So I'm going to put it right there on the inside and then just on the bottom. Now, I'm using a Type Bond 2. This is a longer assembly time, so it actually dries a little slower. That's a good thing in my case for this. Just going to use my finger in here to kind of spread it around, and I'll take the rest of it and just put it on the back of my hand. Easy enough to just wash off when I'm done. All right, so there we are there. Everything looks great. All right, let's rub that little bit that's still on your finger to dry that off and get it off of there. And let's go ahead and put these pieces together. Now we want the top of the riser to be on the higher side of the grain. So that one goes right in here. And we're just going to tap it into place. Beautiful. And the second, we're going to do the exact same. I'll try to get the grain more or less in line, but they don't have to be perfect. Oop. Now that one took a little break, which means you got to get this one out. Now, when you have to do this with them, this is when you are really glad you have a nice drill that you can go ahead and break it free with. There we are. A little more glue down in that hole. Just a half a drop. That's why we make extra, folks. Perfect. All right, with those all done, we're going to go ahead and just let this dry for a little bit, and we will come back to cleaning those off. All right, we've got our tabletop, and we've got our skirt and risers. They're ready to be put together. So let's go ahead and take our tabletop here first. We're just going to lay it down. Now, what I've done before I started was I blew this all off and gave it a quick sanding because I don't want to mar up my tabletop. Okay, so here she is there. I'm going to take this guy, and it should fit in right here. Just like that. So let's go ahead and put some glue on it. We're going to hold it down and let it dry. So let's go ahead and pop this apart and go to work. Again, I'm going to put quite a bit of the glue on the inside here, but I am going to make sure that I get it on every surface on this, because this is what's going to be holding the tabletop to the skirt and the rest of the table. So if there's a little bit of glue that comes out here, we'll take the time to clean it off and make sure it's perfect. Rather a little bit too much glue than not enough and not getting a good solid joint there. There's lots of different ways you can tie this one together. I like this one right here, so that's the one I'm going to use. Everybody will like to do it their own way, and you're more than welcome to do it however you want to. So with our glue in there, we're going to go ahead and get that little bit off the edge of our fingers, flip this over, and let's go ahead and put it all together. Now it just locks into place beautifully. We've got just a little bit of glue coming out in each corner, which is a good thing. I'm going to use my trusty chisel as a sharp pointed finger, and I'm just going to clean it off. Just going to come up, wipe it off on my hand, just like that. That pulls all the glue away from the board itself and onto my finger, which I can then just go wash off. Okay. Kind of a neat trick I learned from one of my woodworking mentors, Fenton Billings. Wonderful gentleman, and he has taught me most everything I know about woodworking. Between him and my father, that's where I learned to love woodworking and where I enjoyed using my creativity to create beautiful pieces of art. Okay, this piece is right here. It's going to dry. We'll come back tomorrow, machine the legs, and then put the legs onto the tabletop. And that will finish out the project, other than a bit of spraying, lacquering, and making sure it's perfect. Thank you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to look at our blank. Our blank is 31 inches long, and our Y is 3 1/4. But the Z thickness had to be 1 5/8, or half of the Y-axis. The reason that is because we're going to put our Z0 in the bottom or in the machine bed, and I want to also move it up so that it's in the center of my part. That way, that allows me to work on my rotational center in my Maverick CNC machine, allow me to work on side 1 and side 3, rotate the part once to work on side 2 and side 4. So this is how we laid it out. So here's the part that we're telling Aspire we have, and here is the actual part. You're going to see how they both come into play when we're working on this one. Let's go ahead and click on OK. It's going to give me some warnings because I've already laid out my tool paths, but we're going to show you how we laid those out and what we did to those as well, because this is where it gets pretty dang cool. And notice there's lots of lines over here and just tons of stuff going on. Let's go ahead and take all those off and show you how we made this piece work. So the first thing that I did is I decided on what cutter I was going to use. And on this one, in order to get a cutter long enough, I had to go to a 3/4 of an inch diameter cutter that had a cutting length of 3¼ inches, or exactly what I needed. I had to use the entire cutter, top to bottom. And when we did that one, we laid it out in a way that we could use what's called a swarf cut. And a swarf cut is when we're going to come down, then we're going to use the entire length of the cutting surface to slowly work our way in. So let's go ahead and lay all that out. Right. Now, the first thing that I decided to do was that I found that as I was cutting, if I gave myself these relief pass cuts here, that it would make it so that when I was coming to the end, I wouldn't have, where the cutter would end, I'd have these nice relief cuts there. The first thing that I found is that by putting in some relief drilling holes, I could make it so that it was a lot easier tool pathing to be done. So let's go over here and see what they did. So in my drilling, what you can do here, which is really, really important, is I wanted to set them up so that they would drill in the order that I wanted them done. So I selected them in the order that I wanted them machined. And by doing that, it came in. If we preview this, it would machine out each one of them. And we can make that go a lot slower and see what that looks like. So you notice how it worked its way in, and then in again, and then in, and in again. And by doing this, I just gave myself some relief cuts so I wouldn't get any tear out on the end of my legs. I don't like tear out, so I wanted to make sure that I could minimize that as best as I could. Okay, it's time to start laying out for our swarf cut. And what we're going to do there is we're going to select the side right here, and we're going to use our offset tool. So we're going to use our offset. We're going to go outwards. We're going to go the radius of the cutter because I want to run everything on the line. So right there, that's going to be my last pass. After that, my second pass, I only want to go 1/16 of an inch. So there's that one there. That's going to give me 2 nice clean passes to make sure it's done. After that, I'm going to go ahead and take off 1/8 of an inch per pass. Now, a lot of people will say, well, 1/8 inch doesn't sound like much, but remember, we're taking an entire 3¼ inch cut out of this piece. So 1/8 inch, pretty aggressive. I like that quite a bit. So let's go ahead and just keep offsetting outwards. Okay, that looks like that's plenty. Now let's do the same thing for the bottom. So we're going to take our bottom piece. And we're going to do the same thing for him. This time, I'm going to just say offset again. We're going to start with the 3/8. And we're going to go 1/16. And then we're going to go 1/8 the rest of the time. We're just going to lay out quite a few of them. Just a few clicks of the mouse to make sure we're out there far enough. That's plenty, but we're going to show you why we did that. Now we know that we're using a 3/4 of an inch cutter. So if I take just the outside diameter, if I take the outside shape of my blank and I just offset that out 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so let's go outwards and we'll go 3/8. Now I have a new box there. Now, one of the other really cool tools, and Vectric has so many of them, we're going to select all of these. We're going to hold down Shift and just deselect those two there. Okay, then we're going to reselect this outer box right here. And we're just going to trim. I want to clear everything outside of the boundary. Boom. Perfect. Already perfect. Let's do the same thing down here on the bottom. We're going to select all of these. Shift, deselect, and then reselect. And again, clear. All right. Everything's now perfect. We can go ahead and get rid of this square, and we have all of our tool paths. The other thing I want to do is I don't want my tool paths to go any further than the end of the leg, so I'm just going to draw a line right here. Let's make sure she's right on the end of the leg, which is where I want it to be. And we'll move those up. We're just going to use our scissors tool, one of my favorite tools. We're just going to trim those off right there. That's just going to make sure that we have exactly what we need in our tool path and nothing more. And let's go ahead and do that on the other side as well. Let's just grab that same line and we'll snap it there. Okay. Use our scissors tool, trim. Perfect. Oop. If we take an extra one, we just gotta do a little Control Z, which is one of my favorite tools that there ever was. Okay, and we'll just trim all this off. Let's make sure that line goes up high enough to do this for us. All right, here we go. Okay, and we can just draw a box around all this stuff and hit delete. All right, so those are going to give us exactly what we need to build our piece. Tool pathing is very important here, so let's talk about that. We're going to use Profile 1. This is our first tool path, and there are some things that we're going to use for this to make it perfect. We're going to set our start depth at 1/4 of an inch, and then we're going to plunge down to 3 to give it our total cut depth of 3 1/4. Reason I did that one is just because I wanted to show you start depth versus cut depth. You can also, of course, just do 0 and 3 1/4. Doesn't matter at all. You can do it either way. Doesn't hurt anything because you're actually starting off the material. Now, we went ahead in here and we edited our tool path so that we said our pass depth was 4. Why is because we're going to come in from the side. An 80-inch feed rate I found was great and about a 19,000 RPM. Now people ask, why are you going so slow and everything else? And because I'm not going to nibble this thing down, 1/2 an inch at a time. I'm going to take one pass through this whole thing. So I'm going to take quite a bit of material, but I'm going to try to do it as efficiently as possible. All right, I've laid out both sides for us, doing the same thing where we select the start point and make sure that we are cutting in the order of the vector selection. Let's go ahead and see it machined. Now that's side 1 up here and side 3 down here. Now we're going to rotate our part 90 degrees counterclockwise, and we're going to work on side 2 and side 4. So right here, we're going to see side 2 and side 4 being machined. Same thing, we got to machine with a nice clean machining, which is always going to be okay. Here we have side 2 and side 4. Same as before, we're going to use the vector selection order and always climb mill. So let's go ahead and see how this one's done. All right, now with both sides. All right, now with both sets of tool paths run with a 90 degree. All right, with both sets of tool paths done with a 90-degree rotation counterclockwise between each two, we get a phenomenal leg. Let's go out and see how it's done on the machine. Now you're going to notice the Maverick CNC has this wonderful turning bay where I can put in my leg and machine these beautiful deep swarf cuts. You'll also notice there's a whole lot of sawdust happening. Usually my dust collection would take about 80% of that up into my dust collection system. However, you can't see what's going on when you do that. So we're going to watch all this sawdust happen, which is pretty fun anyway. Man, does it make a mess. Well, not using the dust control so you can see it obviously leaves me quite a mess. But let's go ahead and get this thing off and take a look at it. All right, our complete leg takes about 14 minutes to machine. We have our holes up here. These are going to match to the skirt, and this one over here, which is going to carry across for our lower shelf. Let's go see how it looks when we get it all put together. All right, everybody, it's day 3 of the table build. We've got all of our parts cut. We've got our legs. We've got our tabletop here. Back behind me, we have the lower shelf. And we've got the spacers cut. You're going to see how these come into place when using our small brass spacers. We've got our dowels here. Now, this is more than a one-man job, so I've asked Andy, the owner of Legacy Woodworking Machinery, and Dave Berkebile, a good friend and customer of Legacy Woodworking Machinery, to help me out on this assembly. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing built. Thank you guys for following along as we built this floating top end table. The precision, speed, and accuracy of CNC made this kind of project possible for me. Aspire's software made it so that I could design and draw every component in this table. Thank you guys again. Enjoy the rest of the user group meeting. Drop me a comment below if you have any questions about this project or any of the other videos that I've done on our YouTube channel. Thanks so much. We'll see you again soon.